Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is time for another Spooktober video yet again, and today we will be diving into the possibility of reincarnation. However, there is also a true crime story tied up to today's topic. Today we will be talking about the fascinating case of the Pollock twins. Our story takes place in Hexham, England, where John and Florence Pollock lived. At this point, they had been married for years and already had two boys. Now, not a lot of information is known about their personal lives. However, from what I've researched, this couple ran a food slash grocery delivery business, and this really kept them on their toes. Now, the Pollocks lived a hectic yet happy life, but there was still something missing. They wanted a daughter. As I've mentioned, they had two sons. And in 1946, they welcomed a daughter and named her Joanna. But not only that, just 5 years later, in 1951, they would welcome yet again another daughter, and this time they decided to call her Jacqueline. So the Pollocks now had a total of four children while still running their business. And as I have mentioned, they had a pretty hectic schedule, and this business of theirs really kept them on their toes. So, since they were extremely busy, the four kids were raised mostly by their grandmother. Now, growing up, Joanna and Jacqueline loved crafting and performing. They would always set up little shows and sing and dance for their family members. They had a very normal upbringing, and since they had a 5 year age gap, Joanna really took care of Jacqueline. And she didn't just take care of Jacqueline as if she was her older sister, she took care of Jacqueline like a mother would. So basically, at a young age, Joanna started to see herself as a second mother to Jacqueline. Saying that these two had an extremely close bond would be an understatement. These girls would do everything together. They had the same interests, the same hobbies, and they just loved each other dearly. However, as the kids were growing up, something strange kept on happening. Although these were very happy and healthy kids, Joanna would often say something quite strange or eerie to the adults around her. On numerous occasions, she mentioned that she, for some reason, knew that she would never grow up to become a lady. And this started out when she was quite young. So her parents and her grandmother would usually just brush this off, thinking that she had a wide imagination. However, this gut feeling that Joanna had would sadly turn to reality. On May 7th, 1957, 11-year-old Joanna and 6-year-old Jacqueline were walking to church with a neighbor when they were all suddenly hit by an overspeeding car. Joanna and Jacqueline were declared dead on the spot, while their neighbor, a younger boy, was brought to the hospital where he was pronounced dead not long after arriving. Now, upon investigation, it was discovered that this was no accident and was instead done on purpose by the female driver of the vehicle. This woman was a mother herself but had recently lost her kids due to a custody battle. She then spiraled into a deep depression, started taking medication, and was just so full of anger and bitterness. Now, it's not really known if she had seen the kids walking on the side of the road and actually chose to run them over with her vehicle. However, she did admit that her intention of crashing her car was to take her own life. Some believe that she did see the kids and was just so angry and bitter towards her own situation. And maybe she had this thought that if she couldn't have her kids, no one else could. But this woman was then arrested and was made to serve her sentence in a mental institution. Now, of course, the deaths of Joanna and Jacqueline took a toll on both of their parents, but they grieved in very different ways. While Florence was being eaten up by depression, John, on the other hand, seemed more optimistic as he believed in the idea of reincarnation. John would have very vivid dreams of his daughters and even started to manifest visions of them. He would then tell Florence about these dreams with excitement, but she didn't want to entertain any of these and just wanted to basically move on from this extremely tragic event in their lives. John, a very religious man, continuously prayed that God would give him some sort of evidence that reincarnation was real. And if ever he did have proof that it was, he would then present this to the Catholic Church. He thought about reincarnation so much that he even dreamt of Joanna and Jacqueline being reborn into their family somehow. He talked about the possibility of his daughters being reincarnated so much that this actually caused a huge issue between him and his wife. And at one point, Florence and John even almost divorced because of how different they were handling this situation, this grief, this loss. But luckily, they were able to set these differences aside and decided to ultimately stay together. Now, miraculously, not long after deciding to stay together, Florence fell pregnant once again, and it was going to be a baby girl. Just one, according to the doctor and the numerous tests conducted during the entire pregnancy. But for some reason, John was so sure that there were going to be two baby girls. He kept on telling everyone that he had this feeling, this inkling that they were having twins. But then again, who would the people believe? The medical expert or the dad who tragically lost his two daughters and had a strong belief in reincarnation? Now, of course, Florence was not happy about this. However, she decided to not let stress get in the way of this pregnancy. And just a few months later, on October 4th, 1958, Florence gave birth to two baby girls, twins. Everyone, even the doctor, were shocked. Well, everyone except for John. They decided to name these twins Jennifer and Jillian. And right from the moment they were born, Florence and John noticed something strange. Jennifer and Jillian had the exact same birthmarks as Joanna and Jacqueline, their daughters who tragically died in an accident 2 years prior. Jennifer was also born with a birthmark on her eye that was in the exact same spot as a scar that Jacqueline had from falling into a bucket when she was 3 years old. Now, the twins also had the same favorite food and the same mannerisms as their older sisters, whom they didn't even know about at this point. Jennifer was just like Jacqueline, while Jillian was just like Joanna. Now, when the twins turned 9 months old, Florence and John made the decision to move to Whitley Bay to get a fresh start away from where the tragic incident took place. And this turned out to be a very good decision as the family thrived in this new place. Nobody knew them in this area, which also meant that Jennifer and Jillian won't have to accidentally find out about Joanna and Jacqueline until their parents were ready to tell them about what happened. And this is something to take note of. The twins had no idea that they even had older sisters. When the twins were around 3 years old, they started asking their parents for specific toys. Toys that belonged to Joanna and Jacqueline, that were stored in the attic and the twins had never seen before. Now, take note of this. First of all, they had no idea that they even had older sisters. They've never seen these toys, and they had no idea that these were all stored in the attic. They were 3 years old at this point. But astonishingly, these twins described the toys to a T. And when Florence and John finally decided to take these out of storage, it was as if the twins knew who each toy belonged to. Jennifer took Jacqueline's toys while Jillian took Joanna's. And they instantly knew how to use these toys. They instantly knew how each toy worked. What's even weirder is that when the twins got a little bit older, Florence and John started to hear them talking about their accident and how they were hit by a car and died. They talked about this topic as if it had already happened to them because they knew all the details, even though they still hadn't been told about Joanna and Jacqueline. The twins were also extremely afraid of cars and were always cautious around them. Now, a few years after moving, Florence and John decided to go back to Hexham for a little visit for the kids to see their grandmother. And at this point, the twins were already 4 years old. And as soon as they got to Hexham, these two just started to ask their parents to bring them to a specific park. And again, they had never been to this place, but they described this park to a T, as if they had already been there before. Now, this park turned out to be Joanna and Jacqueline's favorite place before they passed away. And it didn't take long before other people around them started to notice these odd things about the twins. And when word got around, a psychologist named Dr. Ian Stevenson decided to meet and interview the twins in 1963 when they were 5 years old. According to Dr. Stevenson, reincarnated people would usually start losing their memories by this age. However, when he met with the twins again 4 years later, those memories were still pretty much intact. In 1978, when the kids were now 20 years old, they were interviewed once again by Dr. Stevenson, and by this time, all their memories had already faded. But 3 years later, in 1981, Jillian had an extremely vivid dream of herself as a kid playing in a very specific looking sandbox in a town that she had never visited during her childhood. When she told her parents about this, she was made aware that Joanna had played in the sandbox more than 20 years ago. And I don't know about you guys, but this seems like concrete proof that reincarnation is real, at least in my opinion. There are some who speculate that Florence and John kind of influenced Jennifer and Jillian to say these things and basically fed them with information to gain some sort of traction. But honestly, I beg to differ. I mean, John was very interested in reincarnation, yes, but Florence did not have the same beliefs. She didn't want to believe in that, and she just wanted to live a normal life with her two new daughters. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I honestly believe in this. I don't think that this was made up by Florence or John, especially Florence. She hated the idea of reincarnation. She hated it when her husband kept on talking about it. Even when he kept on insisting that there were two babies, she did not believe him at all. But honestly, considering also the way how Jacqueline and Joanna passed away, I don't think Florence and John would use this as a weapon just to gain traction and to, I mean, what gain would they have in this anyway? But yeah, that's just my opinion. Honestly, personally, I do believe in reincarnation, and I want to know your thoughts on this. Do you or do you not believe in this? Also, why? I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But anyway, that is all the information that I have for you guys for today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next one.